In 1992, a villager found a strange metal tube. He didn't know it, but he had just put an invisible killer into his pocket, leading to a shocking tragedy. Hello everyone, welcome to today's story. Let's uncover a real murder without a murderer. This unimaginable nightmare began in Nangguan Village, located in Xinzhou City, Shanxi Province. On November 9, 1992, a local villager named Lao Zhang suddenly contracted a strange disease. He was perfectly fine while working in the morning, but by noon, he felt extremely unwell. He had a splitting headache, his eyes felt like they were on fire, and his entire body ached. He took a leave of absence, went home, took some medicine, and lay down, thinking he would feel better the next day. However, the next day, his condition did not improve. Instead, it grew drastically worse. He became so weak that he couldn't even stand up. His pregnant wife, Zhang Fang, along with Lao Zhang's brother, hurriedly took him to the Xinzhou People's Hospital in the county. The hospital doctors couldn't find any underlying problem. They simply diagnosed him with acute gastroenteritis, gave him an IV drip, prescribed some anti-inflammatory medicine, and sent him home to rest. Because Zhang Fang was several months pregnant and found it inconvenient to take care of him alone, Lao Zhang's brother stayed behind to help. Under his care, Lao Zhang seemed to improve slightly and could even walk on the ground. But unexpectedly, on November 13th, the brother also fell ill. His symptoms were exactly the same as Lao Zhang's. They rushed back to the hospital, but the doctors were still entirely confused. They suggested both men stay at the hospital for observation. Zhang Fang was overwhelmed, as she couldn't take care of two sick men with her big belly. At this critical moment, the brother's father heard the news and traveled from their hometown. He told his daughter-in-law to go home while he stayed to take care of his two sons. But just 5 or 6 days later, the old man also became horribly ill with the exact same symptoms. Seeing 3 family members struck down with identical symptoms, the hospital realized something was terribly wrong. Fearing a highly contagious disease, they immediately transferred them to an isolation ward. The doctors ran extensive tests and made a shocking discovery. The number of white blood cells in the bodies of all 3 men was incredibly low, falling far below the level of a normal person. But what was causing this? Nobody knew. By November 26th, their conditions took a sharp turn for the worse. Lao Zhang, who was the first to get sick, had already fallen into a coma. Fearing he would die if he stayed there, the hospital transferred them to the first affiliated hospital of Shaanxi Medical Academy in Taiyuan, a major provincial hospital. During a consultation, one doctor noted their extremely low white blood cells and suggested it looked exactly like acute radiation sickness. The other doctors were completely baffled. Radiation sickness meant there was a deadly radioactive source locally. They asked Zhang Fang where her husband worked, trying to find a dangerous connection. Zhang Fang explained that Lao Zhang was just a mason working for a provincial construction company, occasionally responsible for demolition. The doctors thought it was impossible for an ordinary employee working a typical 9-to-5 job to access a radioactive source. To be safe, they contacted the provincial authorities. The province quickly replied that it was absolutely impossible. All radioactive sources in Xinzhou City and the entire Shanxi province were under strict control, and there was no such thing as a nuclear leak. Completely confused, the hospital abandoned the radiation theory and finalized the diagnosis as specific food poisoning, though they couldn't explain what was specific about it. Zhang Fang was stunned. Her father-in-law had come straight from his hometown to the hospital, never eating a single meal at their house, yet he still got sick. Food poisoning was impossible. Then, Zhang Fang realized she was also feeling nauseous, and her eyes were burning. Tests confirmed she had the exact same disease, though her symptoms were the mildest. The family had been hospitalized for a long time. They had traveled from the county to the province, spent all of their little savings, and still didn't even know the exact cause of the illness. Looking at this bottomless pit of medical bills, Zhang Fang had no choice. She went through the discharge procedures and took her family home. They arrived home on December 2nd. Tragically, shortly after arriving, Lao Zhang passed away. Only 5 days later, Lao Zhang's brother also passed away. And then, just 3 days after that, his father passed away. In less than 10 days, a family of 3 was entirely dead. The sky was falling for Zhang Feng. She terrifiedly wondered, "Will it be me next?" Hearing of this tragedy, Zhang Feng's father rushed over, told his daughter not to wait, and took her straight to the Second People's Hospital of Beijing Medical University. On December 17th, the investigation results in Beijing finally provided an answer. Zhang Feng was suffering from moderate acute radiation sickness. Her white blood cells were only 1/10 of normal. Further testing confirmed she had been exposed to severe cobalt-60 radiation. Cobalt-60 is a radioactive isotope that is incredibly versatile. In agriculture, its gamma rays are used to cause genetic mutations in crops to select fine varieties. In medicine, it is used to destroy the DNA sequences of cancer cells to prevent them from spreading. In industry, irradiating rubber and plastic with these gamma rays improves their corrosion resistance, wear resistance, and anti-aging properties. But these same gamma rays are very, very dangerous to humans. They can irreversibly disrupt normal DNA cell sequences. The radiation is measured in a specialized unit called iridium, named after British physicist Lewis Harrold. The safe upper limit of cumulative radiation for a normal person in one entire year is 0.05 iridium. The doctors detected 2.3 iridium in Zhang Feng. They detected 8.1 iridium in Lao Zhang's father and 8.9 in his brother. But Lao Zhang's level was utterly unimaginable. Lao Zhang had absorbed a staggering 33 iridium of radiation. This was not just lethal, it was an absolute death sentence. Realizing this was a nuclear leak-grade disaster, the hospital immediately reported it to higher authorities. This alarmed the central government, which ordered the Shanxi provincial government to thoroughly investigate, locate the source of the radioactive leak, track its diffusion path, and treat anyone exposed. The Ministry of Health joined forces with the Shanxi Provincial Department of Health to establish a joint investigation team. To understand what happened, they had to go back 19 years to 1973. The Xinzhou Science and Technology Commission had launched a crop radiation breeding project and imported 6 cobalt-60 radioactive sources from Shanghai, storing them in a sealed storage well. In 1980, the commission relocated and assigned the old site and the storage well to the Xinzhou Environmental Monitoring Station. But no handover procedures or ledgers were ever made. Because there were no ledgers to check, the mistake lay dormant until 1991. The Environmental Monitoring Station was ready for expansion and wanted to use the old site. They contacted the Shaanxi Radiation Administration to recycle the sources. Experts from the Radiation Protection Institute, along with a researcher surnamed He from the Science and Technology Commission, came to the scene. Relying only on memory after so many years, researcher He told the recyclers there were only 4 sources. When they opened the well, they found 5 pieces. The recycler was stunned, but researcher He argued that the extra piece was not a solid fluid source, but just a lead plug, a shielding device made of lead alloy used to fill the container. Without any verification, the recyclers put the 5 pieces into a lead can and left. They completely missed the 6th metal pipe containing the deadly cobalt-60, leaving it behind in the abandoned well. At the time November 9, 1992, the Environmental Observatory hired Lao Zhang's engineering team to demolish the old site. While working, Lao Zhang looked into the abandoned well and saw the silver tube. Curious, Lao Zhang jumped down into the well and picked it up. It was pretty heavy. He put it near his ear, shook it, and heard a clattering sound inside. He tried to unscrew it for a long time, but there were no seams or switches on it. Unable to break it open, he figured it must be worth a lot of money and could at least be sold to a recycling bin for some cigarette money. Looking left and right to make sure no one saw him, he popped the deadly metal tube directly into his pocket. This was the source of the terrifying radiation. The metal tube stayed in his pocket continuously, heavily irradiating him, his wife, and his brother when he went home, and eventually his father. The invisible killer never stopped emitting gamma rays. But where did the metal tube go? The investigation team discovered that on November 26th, when the family was transferring hospitals, the metal tube fell from Lao Zhang's clothes. His father, who was already suffering from radiation sickness, but not yet serious, picked it up and asked Lao Zhang if the thing was useful. Lao Zhang, heavily irradiated and in immense pain, simply squinted at it and shook his head. Seeing this, his dad didn't want it either and threw it directly into the hospital trash. The hospital's garbage is supposed to be handled by a dedicated garbage recycling plant, so the investigation team rushed there to search for it. They turned the facility upside down, but found absolutely nothing. They quickly questioned Jai, the cleaner who was on duty that day. Jai patted his chest, assuring them it must be there, but then admitted the terrifying truth. To save trouble, he hadn't taken all the trash to the plant. Instead, he had thrown some of it halfway by the side of the road. Following his directions, the team searched a roadside trash heap and finally recovered the deadly metal mesh tube. Ultimately, this tragic accident resulted in the death of 3 people. 2 people were seriously injured, and a total of 141 people were exposed to various degrees of nuclear radiation. Among the seriously injured was Lao Zhang's daughter-in-law, Zhang Feng. She survived because her pregnancy limited her contact, but she was still exposed to intense radiation. Tragically, the baby in her belly suffered severe mental retardation due to the nuclear radiation, leaving him sick for life. There was another victim, a woman surnamed Wei, who happened to be in the same hospital ward as the old man initially. The radiation was so intense that her chromosome aberration rate exceeded 40%, leaving her severely disabled for life just from sheer bad luck. On October 9, 1997, the Xinzhou Intermediate People's Court delivered its verdict. The court ruled that the Xinzhou Science and Technology Commission, the Environmental Monitoring Station, and the Radiation Research Institute all shared responsibility for their sloppy, unrecorded handovers. The person directly responsible at the Science and Technology Commission was sentenced to 2 years in prison. The victims accumulated 800,000 yuan in compensation. Right after this tragedy, the Ministry of Public Security, the Ministry of Health, and the State Environmental Protection Administration jointly issued an emergency management notice on radioisotopes. From then on, mandatory ledger management was strictly enforced. Storage and handovers could no longer be handled verbally. Regular checks every few months were required, needing at least 2 unalterable signatures. Radiation detectors had to be installed at storage sites, and major inspections were mandated every few years to constantly update safety regulations. If these people had been a little more responsible and patient, this heartbreaking tragedy that shattered so many families should never have happened.